they're in that red area, they wouldn't be able.
They
Well-
could participate in the red area if the developer were to choose to allow them.
Right.
Yeah.
But basically, the developers kind of told us they're not gonna go into this red area.
Yeah, that's a question that the developer.
Right.
Can we obligate the developer to this information, or can it change if we base our decisions on this map?
No.
In terms of what information are you trying to obligate them to? Not building in this area, the red area, or?
Well, that one's easy, with
Yeah.
you're talking about the overlay area of the stripes, I mean,
Sometimes
that's,
striped area.
that's a specific area that we can define, yes.
Yes.
But there are, everybody's looking at these red areas and going, oh, those are not buildable. Well, those are not buildable according to this map as per Apex.
Yeah, we cannot obligate them to do
That was my
whatever they
question.
choose, yes.
So, by looking at this and saying, oh, there's a bunch of red stuff there, it's not gonna build there anyway, we don't know that.
We don't know that, but we know that.
But, and we have to keep in mind, this is, you know, I say this all the time, it's not just for Apex, it's for anyone who wants
Yes.
to land, yes.
So just because there's red areas there, and you go, so we don't need it to make that overlay bigger, well, that might be all the more reason to make that overlay area bigger.
Well, or even more reason not to, because you're infringing on more people's rights. Bailey
Well-
Road, we know where Bailey Road is, and if you're west of that, you can't build. If you're east of that, you're participating, and if the company, whoever it is, wants to, they can. That's where I'm coming from. I don't think it needs to be any further east than Bailey Road.
So,
That's
okay.
this area.
And so we're talking about an ordinance that says no building in the overlays or rural residential, only ag.
Yes, that's the question I was trying to identify, because a traditional overlay district is, you can build in the overlay district and you can't build where it says prohibited, but this would be more or less a modified overlay, where you can't build in these exclusion areas, and I'm gonna have to think about how to phrase this, and you also can't build in anything but ag.
And these red areas, those are red because, what, they're rural residential?
I'm assuming because they're rural residential, they looked at the draft ordinance that, was initially considered by the township that only allowed the use in ag. That's what I'm assuming, but I don't know because I'm not the developer.
When we want like some industrial phrasing in there too, any zoning was ever changed to that? Or is it limited to just all ag?
Well, if you're gonna do that, is your question, should we put language in there that you can't build in these, rural residential areas, even if the zoning changes? Is that,
Not so what, I guess what my fear would be is, let's say you have it zoned ag, let's say you can only do a windmill in ag, well, what if a commercial development or something comes in, let's say along the 46 corridor, and it's not zoned ag anymore, you know, but it was an industrial or commercial level, would there be anything to protect that, or
you
work
could
with that?
amend your zoning ordinance to allow them as a use permitted by special use permit in a different zoning district
This will show.
in the future.
Sorry, here's that.
No, they're not. And if you look at your, assuming this is correct, and you have to make a lot of assumptions that, you know, map's correct, the light industrial district in your township, it's hard to tell where it is. If there is any parcel zone, I guess we'd have to look at the official zoning map.
I mean, is our rural residential zoning broken up into those many different pieces?
Yeah, right, you go to the back map, you can see where your,
On the third map, you can see it a little better.
you can see it better. Just flip your page to the third map, it don't matter which, keep going, get to, there's your rural residential. There's your-
Everything
That's
that's
our, that's
yellow
the
is
layout of our
rural.
township.
Rural agriculture
Yeah.
is in yellow.
And they've got,
So the part that don't make sense is up there in the one red,
Right.
that's ag up on the corner of 46. But everything else is.
that's what I'm saying, all these red aren't all, there isn't even that much rural residential, but they've got a lot more than that made out red.
Well, half a mile will be ag, the rest of it's real residential.
I think the only way we're gonna figure out that question is ask them how they generate, I have no idea. And I don't know if anybody
I
knows.
mean, cause you're saying don't extend that overlay because of the red here, but it's not rural residential here.
Correct.
Correct.
Some of it is.
But it's, but
Yeah, some of it is, but not all of it.
I'm not supportive of extending it. I would leave it as Bailey Road.
Isn't that red though, the setbacks from structures and?
Right, it's setbacks.
That's why they have all that red.
Everybody's,
Well, that's not gonna be the case, because those setbacks aren't gonna be all square corners.
Alright, that's true. That's true, but
Apex overlay is garbage, you just gotta make the setback.
right,
that's what I'm saying, that's why all that red there is just because they said, you're the structure, so throw the box here.
Right, so it's gonna be a lot less area than that we're talking about, and you're gonna get people that don't have any choice at all, they're rural residential, right next to somebody, they don't have any choice about that setback. Now you draw it closer to their property,
Well, wouldn't bring it any closer than 1.5.
that's what your setback is for, it wouldn't bring it back any closer than your setback.
it should be 2 times. But, you guys got it.
Well, do we wanna try to draw up an overlay, or we need a little more information, or we can start on it? Guess I'm looking for some direction here.
I think Bailey should be the one for the.
I mean, have a couple options maybe, draw an A and B, and decide on it later, next meeting.
Is there a
I mean, I
setback?
think we're just debating on whether to add a little bit here to the east, or leave it as is. That sounds like
Is there a
the hang up
setback
right now.
from the boundary line of a overlay?
What's that again?
Is there a setback from the boundary line of the overlay?
Assuming that the parcels would be non-participating, that would apply. If the if the parcels within the overlay, or I should,
Yeah, if they're in the
Overlay.
overlay, they can't be participating, can they?
well, they could, if they sign a lease with Apex for nothing, and this occurs, it's called a no facilities lease. I've seen it, where people are basically signing a lease to, I don't know, be a good neighbor, or I think the idea was community lease. So in my mind, that would make them a participant. So then if that were the case, they're in this exclusion area or overlay, they are a participant, then their setback would be either from the road that the boundary line is from, so the 1.5 from the road, or it would be the occupied building setback. I think that was 2 times.
Alright, now that's what they did up in Beal, was the community lease.
Yes.
What's the difference between that and what we're talking about here?
Well, they didn't do, the governmental entity did not require them to do that. They just decided to do that. So we can't require them to do that, there's absolutely no difference, if that's the method that any developer is choosing to do it. But we just can't require them to do
The
it.
community did.
Yeah.
I thought that's what was.
It's a community, it's a community lease.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's been, and
You guys haven't talked about that.
Anyone I think can sign up their ground that they want to. No matter.
Only if they're not invited to the table. If they're not invited to the table. Those people have to agree. And they didn't do it as a government unit, they did it as a community, as farmers that talk to each other.
I don't believe that to be the case.
Yeah,
Just, no, they did it, that's just not how it functioned. I
I
think
don't-
what they did is they just signed up. So I can give you an example in Gratiot County and that county, that particular area too. The developers there have basically just asked everybody in an area.
Well, then of course they're not gonna have a problem with this.
And I think part of that is, strategy for them to gain support, community support. So they have an incentive to do that. But yeah, we just can't force them to do that.
But again, I think that goes back to we're building an ordinance for wind, we're not building an ordinance for Apex.
Right.
So it's not necessarily what Apex's strategy is as far as leasing ground, as opposed to what we need to do, what's best for Winfield.
township and what's the best for non-participating lot, how far away that is. And I know everybody's probably gonna disagree, or there's gonna be a variety of people who disagree.
Even with the overlay, the people in that overlay, if Apex were to ask them to lease their ground, they can still, even though we say they can't put a tower there, they can still lease their ground.
Yeah, Apex could give the people in there $1 million if they want. It's basically, it goes to the freedom of contract. They could enter into any business arrangement they want to.
Wait, so we're not taking away from property owners in that overlay, we're just saying you can't build a tower in that overlay.
Correct. You can't build a tower, or you can't have collection lines, or any of the improvements that would be associated with the wind energy conversion facility. The wind energy facility is just defined.
Is there any way a collection line could be put across the top of this city from the property?
No, because you generally need permission to put any improvement on someone's property, so you're gonna seek an easement from them, or, some other land right.
There's no way that can be forced.
There's no way that can be forced, yeah.
So we're gonna we go down to some of these other numbers and question any of those tonight, or? What is that, George? Are we at a point where now did we vote on number 4, or didn't we? 3 and 4. And then we go ahead and look at 5 and 6 and see if there's anything. Is that what you're looking for, Chris?
Well, 3,
Agreement on,
yeah, we ended up leaving it the same, 1.5 on property line, we left it at 2 for a house. I mean, I guess, yeah, number 5, public roads.
yeah, they're talking
No
about
less than
public roads.
400 feet or 1.5 times the tip height, whichever is greater.
What was the reason for having number
3 and
3,
4 need to be consolidated. The template that was originally considered by the township, for whatever reason, that model listed those same standards within it was duplicative. So they just one needs to be deleted, and I'll take care of that.
So basically 3 and 4 are gonna be combined in.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So 3, how I'm planning on doing it is 3 is going to still have that preference language for having improvements or turbines on property lines. And then 4 will have the 1.5, assuming that's what the planning commission wants to do.
As far as public roads, I think at one time we were like 1.1 or 1.2. And I don't know if we make a distinction between main roads and back roads. And obviously, there's different amounts of traffic.
Public roads.
Yeah.
We just need to change hub to tip. Combined. Same thing in 6 for rail to trail.
I don't know if they have that in our township. That's over in Reynolds, where the railroad is.
So 6 you could leave in if you think that could happen in the township, or you could totally for all intents and purposes, if you don't have those, railroads or rails to trails, then the provision just doesn't apply. But it preserves the right if you ended up having that.
It's very money.
Yeah, so we have white pine, and then we got Frederick Meyer Trail, so we're green.
As far as number 5, the roads, do you wanna leave it at 1.5?
I guess what's the reasoning for the 1.5 away from a road? Why would it be more than 1.1 or?
as long as it doesn't hit the road, why do you need any more than? The telephone poles are close to the road and they fall on the road all the time.
Did you just compare them to a telephone pole?
Cause they don't throw blades.
Or fire? Or
What
ice?
do the safety manuals say on those? From the manufacturer?
I think it's gonna depend on the turbine,
Yep.
and then I
so.
think you'd have to ask, essentially a developer. So I can tell you 1.5 times is used, in Gratiot, and I'm pretty sure it's used in Isabella. And then obviously other communities, or many communities in those two, counties. And then other communities use different numbers. And then there is a debate about whether the safety manual information that some people cite, is that correct? I've heard, I think we've all heard it, there's people that say, this is cited in the safety manual, and then the developer will say, well, no, this is not. They're applying it, so you may wanna ask both sides to resolve that issue.
Well, for the sake of, continuity, the definition should at least be the tip height. Everything should be the tip height.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, we agreed with that.
And so, I think everybody's you're gonna make the average resident feel a lot safer 4.5 times from a turbine than from 1.1, being right on it, what that thing is.
If my only thought was that 1.1 to a road, maybe that could free up some space to move it away from like a non-existing property line, or give you more movement away from a property line into a road, I guess is my mind, my train of thought on that.
Not if you have the setback from other property lines already established. I mean, that's fixed already.
But he's saying
Right.
they could move it.
But yeah, that could free up that area there, so you still have that setback, let's say you're two times away from that property line there, well, that gives you an area that you may be able to build on now if you don't have to be as far away from the road.
Right,
Like a given.
which comes back to, there's a lot more spaces here than, a number of turbines that we're talking about than if you count up just those green spaces.
Right, that's why the setbacks are that much more important than what that overlay shows, or maybe it's an apex overlay, so I don't know what value there is in that, as opposed to what we gotta do to protect the citizens, or the people here with their setbacks. I'm just saying, if we free up space along roads, which is non-buildable, non-accessible, or wherever, or not, you can't build on it, you can't live on it, you can't do a lot of stuff with it, and we can move into that more, as opposed to trying to get close to property lines.
When it was passed here for the Met Towers, that's what it was 1.1.
Right, and that's why I'm referring back to.
Well, I'll entertain a motion on a proposed setback for away from a public road. If you wanna adjust it or leave it, or we can come back to it later.
Later on, we come back to it. Going somehow.
Next item on the agenda is kind of a timeline, what we're looking at. I guess I'm leaning towards meeting again next month, probably the 4th Monday of February. I guess we wanna highlight a couple things we need to look at. do our homework on. Sometimes it'll be the fourth Monday, I think it's the 28th. Typically, we don't meet again till March, but I think we can, we got enough work to do that we probably should meet next month. Well, your time for public comment will be shortly. You waited this long, I appreciate you waited a little longer. So we'll have to do some, get together and figure out a date, make some calls, see who's available. We don't have to necessarily set the date tonight, but at least probably by the next township board meeting. Well, at this time, we're gonna open it up to public comment. Similar rules as before, about 2 minutes. We're gonna allow the Winfield Township residents a chance to speak first, and then we'll open it to other residents in the area. The township did approve a public meeting policy, and those rules will be enforced. So, at this time, anybody from Winfield Township could speak first.
Being a board member, I probably shouldn't come up and speak, period, but I own land in this township. My name is Steve Cole, and I live in Winfield Township. I probably shouldn't come up here and speak, period, but I own land here, and I think my opinion matters just as much as the next person's. I think if you, on the setbacks, if you set the setbacks at, say, two for to a house, it should be that exact same for a somebody that isn't signing with Apex, to their property line. Because if I own 20 acres and I want to divide that up, say 5-acre lots, and give 3 of my kids to build, if that extra half comes in far enough to where they can't build on their property, on that piece of property, it'd be worthless for me to give it to them, wouldn't it? And I'm thinking of generations in the future. There are farmers that give their children, break it up into pieces to their children. That's my opinion, and
Hi, my name is Kathy Koch. I live here in Winfield Township. The residents of Winfield Township continue to remain very concerned about the conflict of interest that exists within our planning commission and with our township supervisor as it relates to the topic of wind energy. We would again like the minutes of this meeting to document that we believe any township official who has a lease with Apex or has an immediate family member with a lease has a conflict of interest and should not be participating in any discussions regarding the drafting of a township wind ordinance. We believe that each township official who has this conflict of interest and continues to participate in the wind ordinance drafting is conducting malfeasance in office. We know of Apex leases or family member leases with Chris Rader, Dale Ulrich, Ben Gordon, and our newest member, Jake Newman. You each have conducted malfeasance in office tonight by participating in this discussion. We also believe that the legal representation you are seeking is not providing advice in the best interest of the township. We believe that the Fahey-Schultz firm has its own conflict of interest due to its representation of public utilities that are invested in wind energy. The firm that was engaged by conflicted supervisor Larson without board consent, and as board minutes reflect, with the understanding they were Apex attorneys. Tonight I am speaking on behalf of a group of people, And if you support what I am saying, I would appreciate you if stand at this time. All these people think your integrity is at rest.
Recuse.
Ryan Bensalkema, Winfield Township. Winfield Township stands to lose a great deal if we do not draft and pass a solid wind ordinance that protects the health, safety, and welfare of its residents and the financial interest of the township as a whole. This wind ordinance is an amendment to the current Winfield Township zoning ordinance, the purpose of which is to promote and protect the public health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of all persons and property owners within the township. While our hope and request for tonight was to have open communication regarding several topics addressed in the wind ordinance, Mr. Rader has indicated that he will continue to limit public comment to 2 minutes and not have a dialogue regarding residents' concerns. If you're not aware, the township residents have submitted 2 referendum petitions regarding the solar ordinance you drafted and presented to the board. The latest petition contained 288 signatures that we gathered within a week. If you continue to deny conversation with the residents and refuse to listen to the majority while drafting this wind ordinance, we will again be facing the time and expense of a referendum. Either way you decide to proceed, the residents will have the final say. It's a question of how much time, money you are going to waste along the way. How much are we into you now, Kyle? $15,000, $20,000?
50?
Hello, Dave Myers, Winfield Township. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the signs that are all around the township. Too tall, too close, too loud. You see them everywhere, right? I know you've seen them because they're everywhere. The signs are posted. Let's start by addressing some of the topics in that order, and starting with Turbine Height. You guys have been discussing setbacks. I'm just going to start with Turbine Height tonight, okay? The current maximum height for anything in Winfield Township is 300 feet. That includes cell towers. Just talked about Met towers, several other things. That's the maximum height that we allow today in our township. Apex is proposing wind turbines of up to 500 feet each. That's considered a skyscraper in my mind. That's twice as tall as the Amway Grand Plaza Hotel, downtown Grand Rapids. Imagine how that's going to look in the middle of Winfield Township. Apex originally planned to put in 104 windmills in Montcalm County. Now it's apparently down to, it's still as much as 75. That would be 75 wind turbines as tall as Amway, Grand Plaza, out here in our community. The residents are requesting that you do not alter the current height maximum of 300 feet. At this time, I would like to ask all the residents who agree with this to please stand and show support. Would any of you care to discuss the thoughts of this 300 feet as compared to anything else today? If anyone else has any comments that they would like to put in there regarding height? No?
Your time's up, sir.
You have 2 minutes. Yep. Thank you.
Good evening, my name's Sally Mayhew of Winfield Township, Indian Lake, without the S. The residents request that the setback be at least 4 times the turbine height. Some counties have setbacks of a mile or more. Your current draft shows setbacks of 2 times the hub height or 1,000 feet from occupied buildings of 1.5 times the hub height of the property line of the non-participating lots, roads or rails or trails. All residents who agree with the proposed 4 times the height, please stand and show that your planning commission agrees correct. Now, you probably won't answer this, but would any of the planning commission like to discuss this topic right now? Okay. And would any of the residents would like to discuss something, because I'm still under my 2 minutes. If so, please use your 2 minutes to do so. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
My name is Tricia Corhorn, Winfield Township. I'd like to discuss the distance from the residential lakes. The wind ordinance is drafted to create special land use permit within the AG district. And the wind turbines in the AG district. That township also has several other districts. The lakeside residential, the rural residential, the medium density, the manufactured home park, the general commercial, and the light industrial. These districts require different restrictions, and the activities of one district shouldn't interfere with another. In that light, the special land use permit for wind in the AG district shouldn't affect the quiet enjoyment of the landowners in other districts, such as lakeside residential and rural residential. The lakeside residential district residents request that no permits be granted within 2 miles of the residential lake. So your discussion here tonight about just adding a half mile isn't good enough. These are hypothetical maps, as we've talked about tonight. And Ben Gordon's asking, why put it in? Why not put it in? It needs to be specific. It's our understanding that the mapping was provided by Apex free of charge, and we need to be careful with them. You need to be specific. So all residents who agree with the 2 mile lake setbacks, that's from any lake with residences on it, please stand up.
Winfield Township. Shadow flicker. There should be 0 shadow flicker on any non-participating